As a child, I loved looking at stars in the sky. I was on an acreage. We were in Iowa. They had like 4 lights for light pollution at that time. You could always see wonderful, wonderful stars. And when looking at the heavens, a creator became apparent to me. And so I had an astronomical passion as a very young child. When I was in school, as a child, everything in the library, for the school library, I could get my hands on, I would read. I wanted to know more about what is out there, what's going on. And my passion for this was so great that by the time I was in 2nd grade, I knew more than my teacher did when it came to astronomy. So when she was teaching elementary sciences, she just went ahead and had me take that week and teach astronomy. Psalm 19:1 says, "The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the works of his hands." When I was 8 years old, for Christmas, my mom bought me a telescope from Kmart. And even though it was negative 10 degrees in Milford, Iowa at that time, I remember running out, setting it up. It didn't matter. I couldn't feel my toes and my fingers. But I kept looking through, and there's fog up the lens, and I'd run into the house. "Mom, I saw the craters of the moon." And I'd come back, and, "Oh, I saw this, I saw that." And just to open my eyes even more, it's like, wow, there's way more out there. And to have that experience myself. And peering through the telescope that night, even though it was cold outside, my heart was deeply warmed, knowing that somebody made this, that this is huge. And so my growing love for astronomy kept increasing, and as my mind grew, so did my telescopes. Okay, by the time you get up to here, like one of these, this is like well over 100 pounds. It takes an hour to set up. See, I haven't been able to do it because to set this up, it becomes an event. This is literally an astronomical telescope that stacks and edits it for you. This entire thing weighs less than 10 pounds, maybe 12 with the batteries on it. And so this renewed my joy and amazement of the work of God's hands. I'm reminded of the joyful fact that God is an awesome creator. And to me, there's no greater evidence than just looking out to the stars and studying the science. So this morning's lesson is the heavens are the work of his hands. The heavens are the work of his hands. So most of the pictures for this lesson I took with that little dwarf thing. So this is our solar system, and this is pretty big for us. And so we have a lot of things. This is our neighborhood. And so with this in mind, these are all pictures. Now this is 3 pictures I took and put it together. That one, the sun, with the sunspots and everything, and then the moon, and then this is a constellation. So because in Genesis 1, verse 16, God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He made also the stars. So he made the sun, moon, and the stars. The Bible tells us that. Psalm 89, verse 37, "And it shall be established forever like the moon, and the witness of the sky is faithful." This is our moon, and what's really neat about this is the Bible writer saying, as sure as that moon comes up and goes down, just like the sun, it's a witness that God is even more faithful, because he made that. Then you have the planets in the neighborhood. Now, these weren't taken with the dwarf, because to take a planet, you have to have like a refracting telescope to split it. But this is like Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. In Acts 17:22, Paul, he was on Mars Hill. Mars Hill. Mars was the god of war. And they named it, the little red dot you see, it's probably, you can see it at night right now, because it's red, and red is war, that became named Mars. He stood on Mars Hill, And he said, "You men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are too superstitious." But then in Acts 14, verse 2, it's pretty interesting. When Paul and Barnabas were going through there teaching the gospel, they called Barnabas Jupiter. And they called Paul Mercurius, or Mercury, because he was the chief speaker. Mercury was a messenger of the gods, and so Paul was the primary lead guy on there. Jupiter was the big old support with Barnabas. And so we see those names mentioned in the Bible. Well, they actually had a connection to what they saw in the sky. And so they nicknamed Paul, the heathen did, Mercury, based on what they knew of their god system and attached to the stars. That's how they passed it on, because they'd always appear. Now, this fall, you remember that comment that came by that they boasted it'd be a new moon, it'd be a second moon. It's called Suchinshan. And it didn't really pan out. But I went ahead and took a picture of this. And as I took a picture of this, I looked at it and I thought, what Bible verse does that invoke me to think of? Well, then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw from heaven, which had fallen to the earth, a star, and the key to the bottomless pit was given to it. Because that's what a comet looks like. It looks like, when you take a picture of it, like it's falling. Then we are in the Milky Way. Our neighborhood, we're like right over here. Our whole solar system is located right about here, and we're in the Milky Way. Inside the Milky Way, not only do we have us, but all the stars you see with the naked eye are in the Milky Way. They're all in the Milky Way. You cannot see any star beyond the Milky Way with the naked eye. There's no way you can see it. And so everything that you're seeing is still pretty much in our neighborhood, so to speak. Other celestial bodies in the Milky Way are nebulae, star clusters, and clouds of cosmic dust. The definition of a star, we'll start with stars, a fixed luminous point in the night sky which is large, remote, incandescent body like the sun. Every star is like a sun. To give you an idea of what we're actually seeing, if you're amazed at what it looks like with your eye on a good night, on a clear night, and you have like hawk vision, your eye can detect up to the 6th magnitude, which means you can see 5,000 objects at the most for the whole night. That's all. But it looks like a lot more, doesn't it? Well, you never tried counting them, but they're there. Now, based on several factors, including light pollution, atmospheric conditions, personal vision strength, the average person could only see 2,500 to 5,000 stars. I took some pictures of some stars, and here's Sirius it looks like a sun, doesn't it? This is the brightest star we have in our sky. And so I was thinking in Numbers 24:17, there shall come a star out of Jacob, and the scepter shall rise out of Israel. You know, so many times they use star to symbolize the people of God. But the reason why they're saying the star, I'm thinking about Sirius. Sirius stands out. Trust me, you've paused and looked at Sirius, the star. I mean, it's out right now. It's a beautiful twinkling star, and it catches your eye. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on stars. There are star clusters. Now, star clusters are large groups of stars held together in the same gravitational forces. And there are two types of clusters, open clusters and globular clusters. Open clusters have a few hundred stars at the most. They're open, they're spread out, you can see them quite well. Globular clusters are like big old sun snowballs that are packed together, and they can contain 1 million stars packed together. It's pretty neat. And so there's 150 globular clusters in our Milky Way, and I was able to take pictures of about 30 of them this summer. Really great pictures. I'm only going to show you one. Well, and this is an open cluster, starfish cluster. Very beautiful when you looked at it. And I thought about Daniel. Those who have insight and shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, those who lead the many to righteousness like stars forever and ever. You know, this is something you can see with the naked eye. Most of these are you can see with the naked eye. And just the thought that during Daniel's time, that in his region, because nobody did more astronomy back then than the Medo-Persians and the Babylonians. And so during the time of Daniel, these people, they didn't talk about the latest movie. They talked about the latest find in the sky. That was their entertainment center. They laid out, hey, you want to go out and look out stars tonight? You know, you didn't ask somebody out on a day, hey, you want to go to a movie? What's movie? No. Hey, you want to go out and look at stars? Yeah, sure. It was a cultural thing that when this was spoken back then, like the stars forever and ever, these are exactly what they saw. Here's one, the Pleiades. You can see this right now. It looks like a little tiny dipper. Now think about that. Job is the oldest account that we have in the Bible that was actually taking place. And so that gives me comfort that they're looking at the same thing. It's the same experience. That has not changed. The chains of the Pleiades. Here's a globular cluster. Hercules cluster, M13. You can see the little fuzzball with the naked eye. But when you bring it in, this is about 350,000 stars in a star ball. 350,000 suns packed together. Isaiah 40:26 says, lift up your eyes on high, see who has created these stars, the one who leads forth their host by number. He calls them all by name. This is like 350,000 stars. And he knows them by name. Here's one. This is Sagittarius star cloud. This is like a few minute photo. You know that cloud you see that was down in the summer, down towards the right? This is looking towards the center of the Milky Way. This is Sagittarius star cloud. This is what happens when you look at it closer. Genesis 15:5, Abraham was told, go up, look at the heavens, count the stars. If you can name, if you are able to count them, he says, so shall your descendants be. When I saw this photo the first time, I thought about how Abraham, when he was given this promise, knowing that they only charted, at the most, at that time, 4,000 stars. Now, he had no kids. He had no descendants. But he was told, you will be numbered as a descendant. So there's two sides to the promise. The first one is, was he get a kid? He has a kid. But later on, they ended up with more than 4,000 Jews. And people would be saying, well, we're not going to mention that because, yeah, it's numbered, yeah, okay, you way more than 4,000 people now. Well, that doesn't bode well. That doesn't bode well if you're following after the faith of Abraham to cap the limit at 4,000. When we know that heaven, according to Revelation, has 12 gates, there's enough room for everybody. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go now to prepare a place for you. That there is no cap on the number of people God could have in heaven. It focuses on the faith and the life of the individual. So when this verse goes here, Abraham, I mean, there's more than 4,000 just in this picture. In fact, if I would have kept it up there, I promise you, I did this one night. I kept it up there and I focused in on it for 3 hours. I wanted to suck in all the line process. It was basically like a white sheet. It was completely filled in. Nebulae. A nebula is a cloud of gas, dust in the outer space, visible night sky, either as indistinct bright patch or a dark silhouette against luminous matter. That's the Oxford Dictionary. There are stars that are either pulling together with gravity, gases, or they're the result of an explosion. They're the exhaust fumes of an explosion. That's where nebulae come from. There are at least 20,000 nebulae that we know of in our own galaxy. That's just our galaxy. 3,500 of them have been cataloged. They have a name. So here's one. This one is actually bigger than the moon, but you don't see it because it's not bright enough. But with the Dwarf 2, here you have, now remember, there are clouds in the sky. This is the Helix Nebula. Job 35:5, look at the heavens and see, and behold the clouds. We only think of these clouds. But there are clouds above those clouds called nebulae They are higher than you. We have an awesome God. The heavens are declaring the work of his hands. Here's one. This is actually the Horsehead Nebula. If you look here, now it's kind of hard to see. I can't really expand it, but there's a horse head coming out of there. This is in the constellation of Orion. And I remember when I filmed this one that I thought of Revelation 6, verse 5. And when he broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come," and I looked, behold, a black horse came out. That's the first verse I thought of when I saw that. When you expand it out, it looks a silhouette of a galloping horse head is what it looks like. Here's another one in Orion, constellation of Orion, the Orion Nebula. Now, if I were to try to travel the speed of light, it would take me about 30 years to cross this thing. That's how huge it is. And Amos 5:8, and he who made the Pleiades and Orion, the Lord is his name. Now, I know you read the verse before in Amos. You don't remember it, but I can tell you this much. You will remember that verse because when that was named, he who made the Pleiades and Orion, I cannot look at this and be amazed and separate it from God. It almost looks like a little eye of a face looking at you there, doesn't it, on that picture? Here's another one. This one freaked me out the first time I saw it. It's called the Ring Nebula. I remember I zoomed in the big telescope, and I was getting the processing image. I looked at it. I was out there alone, and you hear noises out night at the field. And all of a sudden, you look at the telescope. Whoa, he's looking right at me. Okay? I was scared the first time I saw it. This is a Ring Nebula. Hebrews 4:13 says, there are no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open and laid bare to the eyes of him to whom we have to do. That's always a reminder to me, man, God's looking at you. God always knows what's going on. Here's another one, Isaiah 48. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of the Lord stands forever. Now, this one doesn't turn out as good when I stretch it, but this is the Iris Nebula, Blue Iris Nebula. This is just another nebula. Here's one, the Trifid Nebula. This is 3 different types of nebula together. Psalm 136:5 says, to him who made the heavens with skill, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Man, God is really a masterful worker. Here's one. This is the Eagle Nebula. Now, the people who name these things, you have to have some imagination. If you're going to have imagination in naming things, I'm going to have imagination for God. This is called the Eagle Nebula. The reason they call it that, you kind of see the wings here. See, look at, there's an eagle there. You see it? Yeah. Yet those who wait on the Lord shall gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not be worried and walk and not be tired. That's what I think of when I see that. Nebula are in all parts of the night sky. On the Dwarf 2, I would just randomly grab a section of the sky, a 3-degree section, and then I'd film, and boom, 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 nebula popping up everywhere. Everywhere. You can't avoid it. So nebula are all parts of it. Then there's galaxies. Just like the Milky Way, galaxies are structured and made up of 100 million stars, average of 100 million stars, nebulae, and cosmic dust. Some estimates place the number of galaxies in the universe at 200 billion to 2 trillion and even infinite. Psalm 19:1, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the works of our hands. This is the closest thing to our own galaxy. It's 2.5 million light years away. These are some of the pictures I took with the Dwarf 2. Here's a spiral galaxy. It's called the Pinwheel Galaxy. There's a couple there. That's the Silver Needle Galaxy. Here's a Whirlpool Galaxy. This one at the end of the Big Dipper. That's really cool because this galaxy is sucking that galaxy in. It's going to be 2 galaxies pulling together. And Hebrews 11:3 says, by faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. So in 1995, they focused on a tiny, tiny spot in the empty sky. At the end of the Big Dipper, they said, we think we found the end. They got this new toy, and they're saying, oh man, this is going to be great. We're going to prove, it's like the Bible says, that God has expanded, and you're never going to find the end of that universe. We're going to find the end of the universe. So they focused for 10 straight days on a tiny spot, equivalent to looking through a 9-foot straw. That's how small of angle they focused in. They said, we think that that's going to go to nothing. And they gathered and processed all the light over 10 straight days to build that picture. They have stacking it. They stack it. They get a photo, boom, photo, boom, and then they stack it electronically, then can make it go together. It's called stacking. What they found in this experiment, in an attempt to find the end of the universe, were 3,000 more galaxies. The galaxies varied in shape, size, color. It illustrates the awesomeness of God. Here's the picture they took, by the way. This is where the end of the universe was. And look at all these galaxies. They're there. In fact, since then, whenever they do that, here's one from 2004. It's the same results. No matter where they point that thing, no matter how much they point that thing, if they zoomed in, look at here's many, many thousands of more galaxies. Every single time they do that, they come into the same thing. There ain't no end to this. They might zoom in, they say, okay, this time we're going to focus 20 days and we're going to pick that dark spot. So they do, and guess what? More galaxies pop up. I mean, let's face it, this is the latest map of the universe they've drawn. Latest map of the universe. So these are all collections of galaxies from where they can measure them from. They're trying to chart them out. Okay? Our Milky Way doesn't even qualify as a dot. We get part of a dot. That's all. These are the facts. Our sun is a star and has multiple planets orbiting that. That's not news for you, is it? Earth is one of these planets that has intelligent life a lot of times. And there are an estimated 200 billion trillion stars in the universe. 200 billion trillion. Astronomers have actually discovered 5,502 other planets outside of our solar system around other stars. They're called exoplanets. They actually, here's the chart of that right here. They know of a bunch of other planets around stars that are close, like Alpha Centauri. Only close stars, because once you get out that far, you can't magnify it enough. But they have, look at, they got a few of them that look like Saturn that have rings and stuff. I mean, that's really awesome. Think about this, though. Astronomers have discovered that many planets. So, the exoplanets. Based on this, calculated estimates confirm that there are up to, I'm just going to say the number, I'm not going to use it, 100 sextillion planets estimated in the universe. We're one planet. What are you thinking? Come on, you can say it. There has to be life out there, right? There has to be life, right? Okay, good. And if there's life out there, then our Bible seems kind of incomplete at that point. Like there could be aliens that come. Well, so what are the odds that there's still intelligent life somewhere else in the universe? You have the same thing. So it has to be answered in one of two ways, through the smoke and mirror approach or through the statistical approach. There's only two ways to answer that gives you any comfort. First of all, the smoke and mirror approach does this. It would appear to be logical, notice I put a quotes behind it. If you took of the 100 sextillion planets and you only calculated in the odds of another planet with intelligent life as 0.00016 zeros and 0.1 chance. I don't even know what number they call that. But if you take that remote of a chance that a planet could have life of all these planets, you still end up with 1 trillion planets that have intelligent life. This is with the calculation of the odds that intelligent life naturally formed on Earth. The average simple organic cell contains a few dozen proteins. Every cell in your body, every creature, everything, the cell has dozens of proteins. And each of those proteins have amino acids that make those proteins. And they actually calculated what the odds, now this isn't even with life, this is just the chemicals coming together to make that cell. What are the odds that all these things could come together for a single cell organism with no life? What are the odds? It's 1 to the 10 to the 623,000th power. Did you get that? 1 to the 10 to the 623,000. That's 623,000 zeros behind it. Any statistician will tell you anything 10 to the 50th power is considered statistically impossible. Statistically impossible. So, simply put, and if that's impossible, this is what we're left with. These are the odds of raw ingredients falling into place for a single cell organism. If 1 to the 10 to the 50th is considered impossible, then 1 to the 10 to the 623,000th power is astronomically, mind-boggling impossible to have occur. Closing thought. I had a patient in Salina. She was in a nursing home. She was a single-parent mom, some young adult children. She beat breast cancer and then came up with Lou Gehrig's disease. She was crippled and in her bed. She was very much struggling with depression. And as her chaplain, I would go in and listen to her and talk. And she mentioned to me, she said, "Doug," I said, "Well, what do you miss the most? You know, that you used to do?" She said, I used to love to go out and look at stars. I can't go out and look at stars anymore. And I could see where her window was and that there was another roof line that came over. So she had a small segment of sky that would come up. She could only see just a few stars. She says, "I miss seeing that because I always felt comfortable knowing that somebody else is in control. Somebody made this." So I said to her, I drew a picture of this constellation, Cephas, the king, and I said, "You're going to have a set of stars that come up at this time tonight. It's going to come up right about there. You're going to see this shape, like a sideways house. I want you to look at that place, and I want you to pick out the darkest spot on that, and then put a dot on this piece of paper." And she did. Okay? She chose right there. Go from here towards Cassiopeia. There's a dark spot. There's a lot of dark spots. That's the one she chose. And I told her, I said, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen."